welcome everybody. I'm so glad to see y'all here. This is kind of a special week, like I said. We are kind of celebrating our library's rebranding. It's not that we are doing a lot of different things. We do have, in the last couple of years, we've upgraded and enhanced some of our services, and hope you can come tomorrow too, because we're going to have a kind of a presentation of our branding, and also just an outline of all the things that we've done in the last couple of years to upgrade our building, our staff, and just the things that we offer for the community. And so today, this is our first program to celebrate that, and the theme of today is art, and we have renowned Taos artist Angus MacDonald. He is so good and generous to come and be with us today and share with us his story. He definitely has a very interesting life story, and enough that somebody has written a book about, because it definitely has encompassed many things throughout his career. Mm-hmm. He's not only been an artist for many years, he's also been a cowboy and a stuntman, actor, and radio personality. Rodeo cowboy. Just several, so many things. And now he's kind of a world traveler. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, because I'm anxious to visit with you and just let everybody hear your story and hear about your art. So,
okay.
All right. See, I met you in 2019. You had just had a showing at gallery at the Blumenshine House.
Yeah.
And what precipitated that? What started that?
Well, I didn't really know anyone at the Blumenshine, and I got an email from this lady who wrote the book, Lynn Robinson.
Lynn Robinson,
who was friends with Margot Butler, who was the I think her uncle was Burt Phillips, one of the Taos founders, painters.
Okay.
And so she called me and said that Margot had been seeing my work somewhere, and wanted to meet me. And so we met at a little coffee shop in the La Fonda Hotel. And she asked me if I would like to do a show at the Blumenshine Museum, and I said, of course, so that's how that happened.
Okay, all right. Well, I know, and I was so fortunate to be able to be there, and got the opportunity to meet you through the Arnonis, who live in Capitan, and so that was just a pleasure for me. And I've sort of always had it in the back of my pocket here that I'm going to have you somewhere in a library somewhere and interview you about your life, because it's just incredible the things that you've done. Tell us some about your painting life, your style, kind of.
Well, I can't really, my style, I guess you would call it post-impressionistic.
Right.
I really don't talk too much about my work, because I feel like a painting should speak to whoever is looking at it and explain itself. I've known artists, some artists that think that they need to write 4 or 5 pages of 5-syllable words to explain their work, and I think that's kind of silly, because if the work doesn't explain itself, then they're just trying to impress people with their vocabulary. But I don't do that. I just put it out there, and it resonates with someone, or it doesn't resonate with someone, and That's it.
Yeah, you mentioned that, we were discussing earlier, you don't really paint from pictures, photographs,
No.
or something that's right in front of you, so you're not, I guess you're not like a plein air type,
No,
painter.
no, I'm not. I don't use photographs, or I don't copy something that I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is I put a canvas up on my easel, and it's just a bunch of white, and I look at it, and eventually I see something there, and I just go up there and draw off what I see. Sometimes it's not something that I'm actually going to wind up painting, because it's weird, but that's usually how I start a painting. Is it kind of just appears there, and I guess from my subconscious. I always think of my subconscious mind as being the painter. I just hold the brush for it, and
Well, I notice you do a lot of landscapes.
yeah.
So, and of course, it's reminiscent of the Southwest or New Mexico and,
Texas.
Texas. And actually, I know you did some painting in Italy, and I say that mistakenly, I've looked at some of that and thought that it was from the Southwest. But, like you said, that's the way you paint, so it's probably coming from your subconscious. It's just whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, it's just whatever I see on the canvas. Used to I would probably paint 4 or 5 paintings a day. Just because I would see a lot of things. And but I've stopped doing that as I get older. I haven't stopped starting a painting that way, but as far as working on it, I take more time to do it, and I don't paint 3 or 4 paintings a day. I might paint 1 painting a day, but
That's incredible. That's still
a
incredible.
lot of times, you have to allow paint to dry if you want to get certain effects.
So you do oils, acrylics?
Oil, I only paint in oil.
Only oil, okay.
I never paint with acrylic or anything like that.
So what's the secret to painting in oils? I heard you have to be very patient.
Practice.
Practice? Well, probably.
A lot of
Probably
practice.
some talent back there too, but that's what I've heard is you have to kind of be patient with oil because you have to let.
Well, like I say, it's like anything else. It's hard to get used to because people mix colors that don't go together, and they get a muddy color, which you can use that muddy color, if, put it aside somewhere, and you can use it for shadows or whatever. But it just takes time. I started painting in oil when I was 17 years old, and my mother was a painter. She didn't teach me to paint, but I would go and watch her paint. But she never taught me how to paint. I just watched, and I inherited it from her.
She was also a musician.
She was a concert violinist, and she played first chair violin with the El Paso Symphony back in the 30s when she was a young girl, and she was a very good pianist also, and a great painter.
So you come by all of that naturally.
Yeah, my father was a big band leader.
Oh, really?
He was born in Hawaii. He was half Portuguese and half Scott,
Okay.
and he, when the war broke out, he joined the Army Air Corps. And he came over here for a while and trained at Marfa Army Airfield, where they were training pilots.
Okay.
That's where he met my mother. And
So that's why you grew up in Marfa, right?
I was born there.
You were born there?
Yeah. And then that was before the war had actually started. And then he was stationed at Hickam Field in Honolulu when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and he was killed there.
Okay. So you didn't really know him, did you?
No, I was only a little over a year old.
Okay.
Never knew it.
So you lived with your grandmother for a great deal of time in Marfa, which is also, if you don't know about Marfa, Texas, it's definitely an art oasis in West Texas. It definitely
I think
is.
I started all that.
You probably did. I know. It's such an eclectic. Yeah, it's really a neat place to visit and neat place to be. So you were there for a time because you lived with your grandmother, and she ran the hotel there, right? The Marfa Hotel, and that's where you met the people that were filming the movie Giant. Yeah. So tell me about that a little bit.
Well, I had been around movie crews before. In 1949, they filmed a movie called High Lonesome with John Barrymore Jr. and Chill Wills and some other people. And my mother and my stepfather had a nightclub at the Army Air Base called the Skyliner Club.
Oh, okay.
And that's where all the actors would come after they get through shooting during the day.
Right.
They'd come out there and have a beer,
Uh-huh.
And the bouncer in Skyliner was Dan Blocker.
Okay.
And that was before he became an actor. He was going to study in animal husbandry at Sul Ross College.
That's right.
And so he was just a college kid, but he was big, And so they hired him to be the bouncer at the Skyliner.
How interesting.
And, so anyway, that was my first introduction to movie people.
Uh-huh.
And then during the filming of Giant, I got a job with caterer, serving food to everybody, And so I met a lot of people, and the man who was the first assistant director was named Dick Motor. And him and I got to be pretty good friends. I was only 15 years old at the time, and he told me, he said, when you get a little bit older, come out to Hollywood and I'll get you in the union. I said, okay. And
what a dream. I mean, that is like every kid's dream is, you're 15 and somebody wants to put you in the movies.
So anyway, I met James Dean, and we got to where we were kind of hanging out now and then, not all the time, but now and then. And I knew all the girls in town,
Uh-huh.
And so I'd get him a date, and we'd go out to the.
You would get James Dean a date.
Yeah.
I love that.
We'd
That's
go out to
awesome.
the roadside park, which was about 2 miles outside of town, and on the El Paso Highway, and Van Horn Highway, and so I had one of those speakers that I swiped from the drive-in movie theater hooked up to my radio in my old car, And so we'd find some music on and we'd hang it.
Unknown caller.
We would hang it outside the car, and James Dean, he'd get up on the roof of that little pavilion they had, and haul his girlfriend up there and drink beer. We'd have a good time. You know?
Yeah, I bet. Can only imagine.
And then when I went into the Army when I was 18, and I went to basic training at Fort Carson, Colorado, and infantry training also. And then they sent me to Georgia to the Military Police Academy. And so I went to the Military Police Academy, and then they posted me up to Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, wow.
And so I was up there for a year.
That was a culture shock, yeah.
There was an old fort that had been there since the Revolutionary War, and had once been, the commander of that post was once Robert E. Lee, and then Ulysses Grant was also at one time the commander of that post.
Oh, wow, okay.
But anyway, after about a year or so, I applied for jump school at Fort Bragg. And so I got down there and I went through my jump school and ranger training. And then that was early in the beginning of the Vietnam affair. And so I sent me to Vietnam, and I was with
I didn't know that.
outfit. It was called MAG, which was Military Assistance Advisory Group. And what we were doing, we were in 10-man teams, and we were posted outside of Pleiku, up in the hills, you know, and training Montagnard natives to fight with modern weapons. And then we'd run little intelligence missions across the fence into Cambodia, counting the numbers of North Vietnamese and Chinese troops coming down Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Okay.
So we were doing that. And anyway, when I got out of the Army, I went to school in California and got my first class radio telephone operator's license.
Mm.
And that's how I got into radio. I started out as an engineer, and then I wanted to be on the air, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So finally somebody quit, and I got his job as on the air. So I worked I had my show on there on KHEY, from midnight till dawn.
And this
till
was
6.
in California?
No, in El Paso.
Oh, this was in El Paso, okay.
And so they started me on that midnight shift. And then I had an engineering job at another radio station, which was the transmitter was about a mile down the road from there. And so I would get the guy who relieved me at 6 in the morning to come a little bit early so I could have the time to drive down to that transmitter down the road. So I'd go down there and I'd work there from 6 until midnight. And then I'd go back to KA and I'd work from midnight till 6, so working all the time.
I guess so. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I got so tired I didn't know whether I was coming or going.
It's hard, yeah, it's hard to be a radio personality with a personality if you're having
Finally,
to.
I had to quit that
Yeah.
engineering job and I just stayed with KA I was there for 6 years, and then I moved to a station in Tucson for 5 more years. And I was working in the movies on the side, movies that were coming in to film at Old Tucson. And that's where I met Mike Motor, who was Dick Motor's son. And
yeah, they promised you a job.
yeah,
Yeah.
I worked on several movies before I met him. I worked on The High Chaparral a lot, a TV series.
Oh, okay.
And I worked on some Gunsmokes and stuff like that. And then when Mike came in with a film called Real Lobo with John Wayne and Jack Elam. And so he hired me, to do a little part on that movie. And then after that, we got to be such good friends that I worked with him on a lot of different films after that.
Several films, yeah.
After that, we did Jeremiah Johnson. And then did The Candidate with Redford after that.
With Robert Redford,
And then I did a couple more films with Mike Motor down in. We did a film down in Knoxville, outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, and a couple other ones here and there.
Is he like a producer, director?
He was both.
He did both, okay.
Sometimes he was a producer and sometimes he was director. He did a lot of directing on the Wild Wild West, which was a TV show.
Yeah, that's a great show.
Yeah.
I remember that. Before its time.
And we've been friends. We were friends for a long, long time, over 50 years. And he passed away about 3 months ago.
Now his son is Danny Motor.
Yeah.
Who was married to Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's who the Motors are.
Yeah, I've known Danny since he was about 3 years old.
Wow.
And Mike and I used to, when out in Hollywood, he lived up in Woodland Hills. And so we'd like to sit around in the evenings and play guitars, and try to write songs. And little Danny would come out and, Daddy, can I stay out with you guys and watch? No, you go to bed. Make him go back to bed.
How funny.
But he's a cinematographer, and he's very good.
Okay, Danny is, Danny Motor, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. And you're still in touch with Mike Motor, his wife, his family, pretty much.
I still stay in touch with his wife. His first wife, Danny's mother, Patty, died of a heart attack a few years ago. And Mike remarried to a lady named Marissa. And she's a real nice lady. And I talk to her on the phone once in a while.
Okay. So you mentioned being a rodeo cowboy. Since you've been in all these westerns, that probably was played a big part in getting you these parts, I guess.
Yeah, it is, because we know how to fall off horses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I won't get on one. I don't know how to fall off. And I don't want to.
I started rodeoing when I was in high school.
Okay.
And we had a little rodeo team, and so I started there. And then when I got out of the Army, I started rodeoing at some amateur rodeos until I earned enough money to apply to get into the RCA. It used to be RCA, not PRCA, but and so I rodeoed for several years, and I was also a member of the Canadian Rodeo Cowboys Association.
Really? How did that come about?
Well, I used to go to Canada and rodeo up there a lot. You know, Calgary and some little punk and rollins here and there. But
You've always been a traveler.
huh?
You've always been a traveler.
Yeah. But I went to the rodeo at Frontier Days Rodeo at Prescott one year, and it was a Butler Brothers Bolden Survey stock, and I hung up on my bareback horse. I was entering the bareback riding, and I hung up, you know, because when you get on your bareback horse, you rosin your glove really good, you know, rosin the handle, and then when you get your hand in there, you pull the fingers of the glove out and tuck them back under your hand, you know, so your hands doesn't come out so easy.
Oh.
So anyway, he took a big jump once and it got me off on the side, and I couldn't get my hand out. And so he took a couple more big jumps and popped my hand loose, and I fell underneath him just when he was coming down with his back feet, and he caught my lower back and with one of his feet, you know.
Oh my goodness.
And fractured 3 vertebrae. So I was in the hospital for a little while. And you know, first they didn't know what was wrong with me because my left leg was kind of paralyzed. And so they took me to this doctor in Prescott. And he said, well, we're gonna have to do something about that, you know, and he gave me an x-rayed my leg, you know, didn't even know anything was wrong with my back, you know. And when I was a kid, I got shot in the thigh. Somebody shot me with a .22, and it knocked a piece of bone off my thigh, about the size of a nickel. So he said, "Oh, yeah, that's the problem right there." And he said, "I'm going to have to go in there and put a screw in that bone and put it back, screw it back on your thigh." And I said, "No, you're not." He said, "I've been there for a long time. Leave it alone." And so anyway, they took me to Tucson, and the doctor there, he knew right away, you know, what was wrong. He did one of those things where they put you on a table and inject your spine with some kind of fluid. And,
I can't imagine that you wanted to do any kind of stunt work after
let me tell
all
you,
that.
I was in there for 2 weeks, and the day that I got out was the day that I went to work on Rio Lobo. And I still had stitches in my back. So the main stunt that I did on Rio Lobo was guarding this house, you know, and I'm walking back and forth in front of this house, and
I've seen that.
And this Mexican actor, Jorge Rivera, is a big star in Mexico. He gets on the roof and throws a rope around my neck and pulls me up to his level, and he hits me on the head with a rubber pistol, and then throws me off the roof. And
I know it looks very real. You look like you're struggling in that movie.
yeah, well, you know, at first they wanted to put a harness on me, and I didn't want them to because they would see that I was not conditioned to be doing that, you know, and I didn't want them to mess up my deal. So I talked to the director, Howard Hawks. I said, just, I'll grab the rope. You know, when he throws it off,
Oh, yeah.
I'll grab it. So
Yeah.
when he went around my neck, I grabbed it to keep it from choking me. And so we did that 2 or 3 times, the same thing.
Oh my goodness. One would have been enough for me.
And it started my back bleeding again, but I got over it.
And you continue to do that kind of work.
Yeah. Did a lot of work after that.
So how many years did you do that kind of acting?
17 years altogether.
17 altogether. My goodness.
I worked probably on over 40 films and TV shows and stuff like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, and you said you still have your SAG card, your
Yeah.
Screen Actors Guild.
I was one of the lucky ones. Most people in Hollywood don't get to work that much. But I knew a lot of people, and I had a lot of friends. I knew a lot of directors like Sidney Pollack and people like that, and they would hire me, because I did the best job that I could.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and it seems like you do that in every area of your life. I mean, how many years have you painted? Were you painting while you were doing all this other stuff too? I mean,
actually, I was.
you were? You were busy.
I was, yeah. I used to show at a gallery in North Hollywood called the Pickwick Gallery, and I would take my paintings down there and they would sell them for me. But
So has your style changed? Do you?
Oh yeah, styles change because you change.
Right, that makes sense. So what kind of things were you painting originally? In the beginning, I did see. Before you answer that, unknown caller.
I should have my phone off. Thought I did. This time I'm going to shut it off for good. Sorry about that.
So, I forgot what I was going to say. what I was going to ask you.
You saw
Your
original.
your original style.
Yeah, original.
Style of paintings.
Yeah, what did you do in the beginning? What kind of things?
I was doing a lot of cowboys, and Indians, scenes and stuff like that. And I was also doing bronzes. And I would started doing this. I had this friend who lived down in Presidio, artist called A. Kelly Pruitt. He was a pretty good
Kelly
Western
Pruitt?
painter, yeah.
Okay.
And so he kind of got me started doing bronzes, and I would take the waxes up to Suki at a bronze foundry over there, cast them. But I quit doing that because when you take a piece in to get a bronze made, you have to pay half of the cost up front. So you might have to give them $3,000 up front, and then the rest, the other $3,000 when you get it done. And it just got too expensive because you have a piece that's not even sold yet, and you're paying a lot of money.
Yeah, and you've already paid a lot of money just to.
So I think I was a pretty good sculptor though.
Wow. Do you still do any of that at all?
I don't do it anymore.
No.
My wife, before she passed away, wanted me to start doing it, but it's just not worth it.
Okay. Something I read that you, at some point, I'm trying to think how long ago this was, you studied with Norman Rockwell for a while.
Yeah, when I was stationed in New York.
Okay, when you went to Brooklyn.
I would go up to Connecticut and study with him a little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, his style was
But
like
I was studying
more the modernist.
commercial art,
Yeah,
not fine art.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something I was curious about because his style is so different than yours.
Yeah, no, I was studying stuff like logo design and commercial stuff.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell me more. Tell me more about your. I know that you are you're Zen Buddhism priest.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how that influences your work. How does it inspire your work? Does it?
It inspires everything that I do.
Yeah.
I first started getting interested in Buddhism, I think, when I was in the Far East, and we were in Cambodia one time in some heavy triple canopy jungle, and we came across this huge Buddha, stone Buddha. It was about 2 or 3 stories tall, and it was in kind of an old pavilion. It was overgrown by jungle, and had been shot. It had bullet holes all in it from the Khmer Rouge shooting at it, and I kind of interested. I was kind of got interested, and but I think I was always been a Buddhist before I even knew what a Buddhist was. When I was a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, there was this big bush on the sunny side of our house, and I called it my warm place because it was always warm. And I would get inside this bush and I could see out, but I didn't think that anybody could see me in there. You know? And I would sit there, and I would go like this. Like that, and all of a sudden I would get this really strange feeling, and I would look at my hands, and I would go, I would not know what they were, like they were so strange, and they would move, and look at my feet, and I was, what are these things, and
How interesting.
and then I would pop out of it, and it was kind of a thing, I told my Buddhist teacher, Kobun Chino Otagawa, that story one time, and I asked him, what do you make of that? And he said, it's forgetting the self, and that's what it was, and that's one of the things that you do when you do zazen, which is meditation. You don't sit there and think. You sit there and not think, and you really can't not think, because thoughts enter your head whether you like it or not.
Right. Yeah.
But when you latch on to a thought, it's like damming up a stream. You have to let those thoughts go in this side and out that side, pass like a cloud. And if you latch onto it, then you're not doing zazen anymore. You're not doing meditation anymore. You're thinking about whatever that thought was. And like I say, it's like damming up a stream so the water can't flow.
So do you have any kind of, probably do, some kind of meditation that you engage in before you paint? Or is that part of your routine?
I've been doing this so long now, for over 40 years, that I'm always doing zazen.
Okay.
Even when I'm not doing zazen, I'm doing zazen.
Okay.
When I'm driving, I'm doing zazen. When I'm painting, I'm doing zazen. I'm always doing zazen. When I'm
That
cooking,
sounds very peaceful.
the point is to always keep yourself in the present moment, because there is no other time than the present moment. You can't be alive in the past, that's gone. And there is no such thing as the future. There's just the present moment, and the present moment becomes the next present moment, and the next present moment. There's nothing beyond that. It's just each present moment following the last one, and this moment falls into the past, and this one is in the present moment. But there's no future, just this present moment. So if you can learn to keep yourself in the present moment.
That would be so helpful, I think, because so much of our anxiety is about the future.
Yeah.
Our depression is about the past.
Yeah.
So it's like if you could, always find a way to live in the present.
Yeah, if you're always living in the past, or if you're dreaming about the future, planning something in the future, it's not a real thing. It's an illusion. And what you're doing to yourself is you're not alive in the present moment. You know, you have to be alive in the present moment. It's the only time we have to be alive.
Right.
I try to stay there all the time. But sometimes I slip and I go back and I go, you know, but I don't think about the future, but sometimes I think about the past, you know.
Yeah, I think we do that the older we get.
I don't stay there very long.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fabulous. This is wonderful to get to talk to you and visit with you about your life and everything. I wanted to offer up some time if anybody had some questions. You want to ask him more about his art or anything? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How do you get out of the past? If you get yourself back into the past, do you get out of the past through meditation?
Well, the past is not here anymore. You know, it's gone. So just you know, you can remember the past events. You know, like I just remembered a whole bunch of them for you, but just don't stay there. You know, you have to realize that the present moment is, like right now, is the only moment you have to be alive. You can't be alive back then. That's gone. You can't be alive in a non-existent future. So you can only be alive right now, right this moment, and the moment after that. You know, this moment. When I say this moment, that moment is already in the past.
I understand that, but do you use meditation to get yourself? If you drift back in the past, do you use meditation to get yourself out of the past?
Yeah. Do you use some kind of meditation practice?
When you're practicing zazen, and I'll kind of show you how that works. You sit, you know, on a cushion, and you try to sit in a half lotus, which is left leg on top of your right thigh. Or if you're really limber, you can sit with your left leg on top of your right thigh and your right leg on top of your left thigh, which is really hard to do. It can be painful.
Oh yeah.
But and you keep your spine straight. You know, your spine is shaped like this, and so you want to keep it straight and keep your head, your chin kind of pulled in so that your ears are kind of in line with your shoulders, and the top of your head you just kind of feel like you got a hook right here, and you're hanging from the ceiling. You know, so you keep your head like this. And your hands are like this. This is a mudra. And what's happening is the pressure on your thighs is pressing on acupuncture points in your legs that have to do with your spleen, your liver, and your kidneys. The energy in your body flows like this. So the energy is flowing, the energy center in your body is here, and called in Japanese hara, is abdomen. That's where your energy center is. So the energy is flowing like this through your hands. And so it's all about the flow of energy. And as long as your spine is straight, your head is in the proper position, it keeps those neurons in your firing in your brain. It's all scientific. It's not religious, or it's not magic. You know, it's scientific process.
So was there a period?
It takes a while. You know, you can't just sit down the first time and have everything correct. You know, it takes a lot of practice. You know, when I first met Coben, my teacher, Coben Otagawa, Chino Otagawa, I met him in 1980 in Taos, and I was walking. There used to be an alley off the plaza, kind of a mud path that went back to Bent Street, and I had a wooden boardwalk on both sides of the thing, so people wouldn't have to walk in the mud. And so I was going down to this. There was a little kind of a hippie restaurant down at the end of the boardwalk called Joe's Boardwalk Restaurant, and I was going down there to eat lunch, and I saw this little Japanese man and an older Japanese woman on the other side of the boardwalk, and he called to me, and so I walked across through the mud over there, and he introduced himself, and he introduced this lady as his mother, and he had brought her from Japan for her birthday, and he liked Taos because it reminded him of where he came from in Japan, which was in Nara. And he'd been a priest, a monk, since he was 8 years old. Came from a family of Buddhist monks for hundreds of years. And he trained at Eiheiji Monastery in Kyoto. And he was brought to America by a priest by the name of Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, and who came and started the first Zen monastery in America in San Francisco. And he brought Coben over because he had been told by the people at Eiheiji that he's the one that he should have. And so he brought Coben to help him with San Francisco Zen Center, which later became Tassajara. They bought some property out on Sausalito that way, and started a kind of a bigger place, you know. And when he first came over, he couldn't really speak a lot of English, and anyway, I met him there, and he invited me to come to his mother's birthday party, and they had a house rented, and so I went, and we had some cake, and then he took me into this room, this house he had rented, and he had a couple of called zabatons, a thick mat, and a round cushion called zafu. He had two of those in there, and he told me, sit down, you know. So I sat down, and he showed me how to sit, and that's where I started practicing Zen. And I practiced with Coben. Then he went back to Japan for a while, and then he came back. And in 1982, we had a grant from some friends of ours, Dan Gerber, who was the chairman of the Gerber Baby Food Company. And he gave us enough money that we could buy some land, and so we bought a place up on the mountain and had a house there and an old garage. We rebuilt the garage and turned it into a zendo, which is where you practice. And so I practiced with Coben. You have to practice with a teacher for 5 years before you can ask for ordination. And so I practiced with Coben every day, every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 5 years. And when the
Wow.
5 years was up, I asked him, can I get ordination? And he said, and that was about summer of 1985. And he said December. So in December, well, he gave me ordination as a junior monk, and I continued to practice with him for another few years, and I moved to. Thought I was my mind was in a place where he could give me a different ceremony, which is called shuso, and it's a ceremony for junior monk, where you practice teaching other students for 1 year. Teaching in Buddhism is not like teaching them the history of Buddhism. It's like teaching them zazen, how to do zazen, and to be mindful of everything that they do. When we first started, Hokoji was what we named the place. And Hokoji means Phoenix Light Temple. And when we first started, we had quite a few people coming, and people. We had a little foyer that you entered to take off your shoes before you went into the zendo to sit down, and people would come in and they would just kick their shoes off, and I would come in and I would see all these shoes on the floor, and they were like a big mess of shoes, So I would go in and I would sit for a little while, and then I would get up when everybody was quiet, and everybody was sitting, and I would go out and I would line up everybody's shoes in a nice little row. But I never told anybody that I was doing this, And when they would come out, they would go, and put their shoes on and leave. But the next time,
They were thinking something magical was happening while they were in
yeah,
there.
the next time we'd sit, well, the same thing. They'd just throw their shoes off and they'd be everywhere, and I'd do the same thing. And I did that for I don't know, it must have been a month, And finally, they realized how they were supposed to put their shoes, and not just throw them off anywhere. So finally, after a while, I'd come in and all their shoes would be all lined up in a nice little row.
How funny.
But they never knew who did it. I never told them.
So anybody else have a question? Yes.
Well, I'm assuming these are your two paintings?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm curious when you did them and where you were.
those are pretty new, probably within the last month or so.
And where were you when you were doing, in your studio? Or where were you when you were doing?
In Taos, yeah.
At your home, probably.
Yeah, I'm still painting Italy even when I'm in Taos.
Yeah, I know.
I was fascinated by those. They have these trees over there called umbrella trees, umbrella pine, and they look like an umbrella, And I've never seen them before, so I was really kind of fascinated by them. So I put them in just about every painting I do now.
They're very cool. I conjure up Dr. Seuss a little bit
Oh, yeah.
when I see those trees.
Dr. Seuss?
Yeah, with those trees, when I was just looking at the trees, but they're actually trees like that in Italy, so.
Oh, I wanted to say this, just so you don't get the wrong idea. Buddhism is not a religion like Christianity or Judaism or any other religion. It's not a religious, it's not that kind of religion. It's a practice. Buddhism is a practice. It's trying to discover your true mind. And that's what it's about. It's about discovering yourself, looking inside and seeing who you are and what everything else is. And so don't ever believe that Buddhism is a religion and that Buddhists worship some guy called Buddha, you know, because Buddha means your mind, your true mind. It's a Sanskrit word. And it's not there was the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. They called him Buddha because he reached a state of enlightenment, and he was. So when they called him Buddha, it meant they were talking about his mind.
His mind.
Yeah. But one thing for sure is that we practice religiously. You know, that's the only religious part of Buddhism is we practice religiously. We have rituals. We chant some sutras, a lot of the sutras, which are teachings. We chant them in Japanese, so you don't understand really what you're saying when you're chanting like the Heart Sutra. Unless you know already what it says, you don't understand the Japanese unless you're Japanese and you speak Japanese. But it's not the words to me are not important. Important is the sound of the word, and it's like Zen Buddhists don't practice the mantra Om. It's more of Hindu or Tibetan Buddhist practice. We don't do that, but it's a good thing to do because because of the sound of it. It goes Om. It's kind of like when I was doing when I was a little kid in the bush. I was doing that, but I didn't know what it was. But that's when we chant the sutras. It's the sound of it and the repetitiveness of it is what's important more than understanding what it says, because you can take every book that's ever been written about Buddhism, every sutra, and put them in a big pile and set them on fire, and it wouldn't make any difference, because the teachings of Buddhism come from your zazen, it comes from your meditation practice. That's where it is. Coben was such a great teacher because he hardly ever talked to me about anything never about the history of Buddhism, and he knew the history of Buddhism because he had a degree in that, but it's not important. So if you want to know it, you can learn it. The books teach you that, but it's not going to make you understand what Buddhism is. There are people that write books about Buddhism, like Alan Watts was the guy in San Francisco way back, who wrote a lot of books about Buddhism, but he never practiced Buddhism, so he didn't really know what he was talking about.
Something it's, as librarians, we're always interested in genealogy too, a little bit. And you found out later in life, wasn't it, that you have some Japanese heritage?
Yeah,
is that right?
I do. I have. I had my DNA done, and turns out I'm 26% Portuguese. And my Portuguese grandmother, her grandparents or great-grandparents were Japanese. Their name was Nagasaki. And, yeah, I think that's right. And they were both born in Japan. So I'm about 5% Japanese.
How about that?
Yeah, it's strange, you know. And then the Portuguese, a lot of my paintings, actually, I saw a bunch of pictures. I've never been to Portugal, but I've seen a lot of photographs that some guy was taking, a native of Portugal was taking of the small villages and stuff. And a lot of them reminded me of some of my paintings, you know, because they look like a lot of the early Mexican settlements in the United States, you know, along the border. And so then I realized this stuff is in my
It's in your
It's in my
DNA.
DNA,
Yeah.
you know. And I play shakuhachi, which is a Japanese bamboo flute. Very difficult. It's like everything Japanese, very difficult. It takes, which is really good because, you know, the harder something is, the better it is for you. You know, if you do everything that's easy, you know, that's no fun at all. So shakuhachi, it's you know, it comes in different sizes, but standard is called 1.8, which is about, you know, that long. And it has 4 holes on top and 1 on the back. It plays every scale, every note in, what do you call it, that you can play on any instrument.
Oh, yeah.
And it's done by different fingerings of the holes, you know, half hole, quarter hole, eighth hole, you know, on each one you get different notes. And it plays 3 different octaves. And it's very hard.
How long have you been doing that?
I got my first shakuhachi from a guy by the name of Riley Lee, who was teaching shakuhachi at the University of Hawaii. And I was walking down the street in Honolulu, and I went past this department store that was that had some shakuhachi music, and I'd never heard it before. And so I went inside and I asked this Japanese lady what that was, and she said shakuhachi. And I said, where can I get one of those? And she said she didn't know, but she sent me to somebody else. And the other guy said, you can go see Riley Lee at University of Hawaii. So I went over there, and I met Riley, and he brought out a couple of flutes. And it usually takes an average person about a year before you can play a single note on shakuhachi. And I played it right away. The first note, which is called ro. That's with all the holes covered, ro. And it's like the foundation of shakuhachi playing. And so anyway, I bought a kind of a cheaper version of shakuhachi because, you know, I didn't know at that time if I was going to continue or not, so I didn't want to spend a lot of money. You can pay up to $30,000 for a good shakuhachi. And anyway, I still talk to Riley. He is now a grandmaster shakuhachi player.
Wow.
And he lives in Australia now. And he's very, very good. That guy never makes a mistake that anybody would notice. You know,
That's incredible.
very good. And so I've been practicing that long. You know, and I won't live long enough to ever become a really great shakuhachi player. There's not enough time.
So does anybody have any other questions? Yes.
Just a quick one, this has to do with your first encounter.
What's that?
This has to do with how you met your teacher. And you're walking down one side and
Yeah,
and he's walking down the other, and he sees you and says,
yeah.
what did he see? How did he know?
I don't, that he just knew, he knew. You know, Coben was, when you look at Coben's, look at his eyes, it was like you were looking at a 2-year-old baby's eyes. I mean, he was so, you know, I guess you could say enlightened. He was, he just, you know, when you get to where you know things after you've been practicing for a long time. And in Buddhism, they call it knowing without knowing. It's like you know something, but you've never studied it, it never had anything to do with it, but you know it. And it's like that, things come to you, and you kind of recognize something, and without really having any reason for it. And I do that all the time. It's how I paint, you know. I just grab it out of thin air.
Anybody else have some questions for Angus? Well, we thank you all so much for being here. And thank you, Angus. It's just been such a pleasure. I know. Appreciate you for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah,
Enjoyed it.
I know. I did too. Thank
Probably
you so
talked
much.
too much. But
No, you're perfect. You're perfect. Enjoy
I haven't talked this much in years.
You have a lot to say. Angus also has some of his books here that Lynn Robinson wrote about his life. So if anybody's interested, he has those for sale and for book signing. So we can do that.
And if you don't mind, I will leave those books with you,
Okay.
and I will donate half the proceeds to the library.
Well, how nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful. Much appreciated. All right. Well, we thank y'all for being here.